Hello, hello. Um, it's time to talk about all the movies I watched this month. If you don't know how this kind of video works, which I would be surprised that you found this video if you don't, but you know, um, these down here are all the movies I watched this month, which are only 12, which is not the most, but um, I didn't watch that much this month, but I watched a lot of really good stuff this month. So that makes up for it, kind of. Um, and we're going to do this in the form of a tier list, which you probably know how this works if you've been on YouTube before. um, but yeah, we have 5 tiers. I mean, I rate movies out of 10 on Letterboxd, so the obvious solution would be to make 10 tiers, but then that would be kind of boring. So I'm doing it this way, where I'm doing 5 tiers, and I just have to figure out how I rank them. Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, also, this is, I'm rating on a curve based on what I watched, right? Like, what ends up down here is not the worst thing ever created, and what's up here is not the masterpiece of our generation. But yeah, I think you get the idea. So let's just start, I guess. First thing I watched this month was Dune Part 2. And I. So a lot of people like this movie a lot, obviously. Lots of people really love it. And I just was pretty underwhelmed by it, sadly. I really loved the first Dune movie. And I mean Dune Part 1 by Denis. Not like the David Lynch film or anything like that. I really loved the first film by Denis. And the second one, I mean, I was excited for it, but then it just kind of let me down. I think the pacing is a massive issue. And I think because the movie rushes so much through the plot, the characters, as a result, are kind of flat, except maybe Paul. I think he gets a pretty good arc. It's obviously built entirely around him, but the rest really kind of get left behind. And you don't really end up caring about what happens that much, I think. Especially the Harkonnens. I did not care about them at all, really. Obviously, it's a super well-made movie. Um, it is very well made, like the first one, but I think also now the second time, it's a little less impressive, which is maybe not fair because it's still extremely well made. But I just wasn't wowed by it as much, especially because I loved all of the architecture in the first film. And this movie obviously is a lot more in the dune or in the desert. I don't know. Um, and yeah, this one didn't work for me as much, sadly, unfortunately. For a lot of people it did, which I'm glad, and I'm still very excited for Dune Messiah. But yeah, this one was just kind of good for me, and not more than that, which is unfortunate. But what can you do? Next one I watched is Anatomy of a Fall, which I watched, I think, right after the Oscar ceremony. After it won Best Original Screenplay. And I mean, this movie is really good. Um, this is the kind of thing where if I rewatch it, I'm pretty sure it might end up here. But for now, yeah, I mean, I think like it's so well written, obviously, and it's so impressive how natural the whole thing feels. Like it really doesn't feel that staged, especially that big fight scene, which I think everybody has seen a clip of, is so well written and so well acted that it feels just natural. I mean, Sandra Hüller is amazing in the film, and I think it's just such an interesting movie in the way it looks at the courtroom as a place that sensationalizes lives, like, and how it needs to find answers where there aren't necessarily ones, and things that don't really matter in any other situation suddenly become the most important thing. Um, because you need to find a reason somewhere, and sometimes that means just creating one. And obviously, especially with both of the characters being writers and with the son being blind, I think there's so much interesting thematic stuff about the truth and like obviously like subjectivity and truth, and just what truth in front of a court means and how much of it is fiction. Yeah, it's a really fascinating movie that I was thinking a lot about afterwards. And again, I think if I saw it another time, it probably would jump up even more in my ratings. And then next, I watched Ponyo. Now this, I mean, I'm a big fan of Miyazaki, and I love Ghibli, but I haven't seen all of the movies, obviously. And Ponyo was one that I hadn't seen yet, and I kind of heard it's like, okay, I mean, people liked it, but I've never heard it mentioned as like one of the greats, and this is like up there for me, for Ghibli and for Miyazaki as like one of his best. Not his best, definitely not. I mean, Spirited Away is my favorite movie of all time, so that obviously is above it, but still, it's like, it's such a cute movie. Like, everything in that movie is so adorable, especially Ponyo herself, obviously, and Sosuke and their relationship, but also just how imaginative it is, like any Ghibli film, of course, and how the designs are amazing. Like, it seems so silly to say that a Ghibli movie has great animation, because of course it does, but this one in particular really stands out in how colorful and fun and just whimsical everything in it feels. Like, it's not a movie that I'm gonna talk about because it's thematically rich or because it's like, like Anatomy of a Fall, this really interesting kind of deconstruction of like what a courtroom drama is. It's just like this perfectly. I mean, it's light, it's fun, it's cute, but it does that, I think, to absolute perfection. And I think that's all it needs to do, you know. Um, but yeah, I mean, I really love this movie, and this is probably one that I'll rewatch in the future as like a comfort watch. Next, we have Ex Machina, which is a rewatch, and this, I mean, I consider myself an Alex Garland fan, a pretty big one, but I hadn't rewatched his movies in a while. And Ex Machina is one that, I mean, I still think it's really good, but the dialogue is so rough. Man, like, the dialogue is really rough. And I did not remember that at all from the last time I watched it. And it really stuck out to me this time. But, I mean, I still think it's a good movie. I still think it's really interesting how it apparently creates a Turing test for the viewer. I think it has some interesting stuff to say about how men look at women in a way. I mean, especially with Alicia Vikander's character, I think there's just a lot of very charged, like, gender dynamics that the movie plays with, and how sort of innocence and like almost this infantilization of a character, and the fact that she needs his help, how those kind of are attributes that he is attracted to, and I think that's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a good movie. It has a good ending that kind of sticks with you for a bit, but I was really not in love with it as much as I was when I watched it the first time. But I mean, Annihilation, on the other hand, I think is an amazing movie still, and this is kind of in between here for me. Um, this movie, I mean, I love cosmic horror, and this to me is one of the greatest cosmic horror films I can think of. Especially the lighthouse sequence is such an incredible horror sequence. There's really not that much I think that comes close to that sequence in particular. Um, and just how this movie absolutely refuses to give you an answer is something I really love about it. It just creates this shimmer and makes things happen within them that are not even that terrifying by themselves, but the more you think about them, there's something so uncanny about it. And again, in combination with that refusal to give you answers, I think it's a really chilling film that sticks with you for those reasons. And I mean, I also just love the shimmer, how it looks, and the little world it creates inside of that. What happens inside of it, I guess I'm just gonna say. The bear sequence is another one it really sticks with you. And yeah, that's Annihilation is just such a good cosmic horror. And does have some interesting themes about sort of self-destruction and what that means for us as humans. Although I definitely think that could be done more. To me, it's really just on an emotional level. It's a movie that really gets under my skin in a way that not a lot of horror movies do, to be honest. Yeah, the next I watched Princess Mononoke. This one is a rewatch. Which Annihilation also was. I don't know if I mentioned that. But Princess Mononoke is one of those Ghibli movies that it's good. It's really good. I mean, it's really good. But it's never the best Ghibli for me. Or one of the best Ghiblis for me. I think it's just a bit overstuffed. I mean, I think there's so much interesting stuff in it, but it's just too much. And I notice that every time I watch it, I think this is the third time I've seen it now. And it just never comes together for me entirely. I mean, I'm only talking about the movie this way because I think most people know it's an incredible movie. And I agree. It's an incredible movie. It just can't reach the heights that it seems to for a lot of other people, for me. But yeah, I mean, this is such an iconic movie. There are so many images in that movie that are so iconic. And yeah, I mean, watch it if you haven't. I think everybody should see it once. Next up, I watched Poor Things. This movie is really interesting. Okay, so obviously the movie is exceptionally well made. Like, the cinematography and the production design are ridiculous. I mean, I've always been a fan of Yorgos Lanthimos, but this movie is like a completely new level for him, but at the same time it still feels so much like his style, and I think it's so impressive. But yeah, I mean, the look of the movie is completely insane and like one of the most gorgeous things I have seen in film in recent history. And I know that Dune is right there, okay? But I do think Poor Things was a lot more impressive. Or at least what it did was a lot more for my taste. But like the writing, I wasn't sure about at first. I mean, I liked it. There was no point where I didn't like it. But I wasn't amazed by it until pretty close to the end. And there's this reunion. And in that moment, the whole film just clicked together for me for some reason, and I was so emotionally hit by the movie, which I did not expect. And that's kind of when I realized, okay, I don't just like this movie like superficially, but also I really like. I mean, the characters I think are pretty great, and just Yorgos Lanthimos is an extremely interesting filmmaker, I think, and I I just want to see more from him. I mean, we're getting a new movie from him this year in like 3 months, which is completely insane. And then after that, he's already shooting his next movie, I think. Which I think we're all so lucky that we get him, well, his movies as regular now, at least for a bit, because he really knows what he's doing, and he's making really interesting movies. And Poor Things is one of those. Yeah, and then I mean, next up I rewatched the original Alien. As you can tell, great is where it's at this month. But Alien, yeah, I mean Alien. Obviously, it's a classic for a reason. The production design, again, another movie with incredible, unique, but such evocative production design. Of course, the xenomorph as well is so iconic. H.R. Geiger created some like all-timer designs for this movie. And it's just such a great like creature feature horror film. I mean, it is, I think, kind of the blueprint for this kind of movie nowadays. Not that there weren't movies like it before, but I think nowadays this kind of movie is largely inspired a lot of the times by Alien and by Ripley. She's just like the xenomorph, incredibly iconic. I think the first like 30 minutes of the movie are still kind of meandering and it's slow, I think. But then once it gets going and the incredible practical effects come in, that's then the movie gets going. You know, when it gets going, it gets going. Which is kind of a stupid statement, but I hope you know what I mean. It's just so good at what it does. Yeah. And then I rewatched Zodiac, which this movie is incredible. I mean, David Fincher is another director I really like, and another one who I need to watch some more of his films. I mean, everything I've seen I've really liked, but I have not seen everything. And Zodiac is one I rewatched, and it's such an incredible film. Like what he does here with the serial killer film and the true crime film, and how he replays against what this movie usually is, and takes a very different, very interesting look at this kind of film, at real serial killers. Like, the Zodiac Killer is such a loser in this film, and so are the people trying to look for him. And just, I mean, I love movies about obsession. I really love movies about obsession, where people get trapped in their obsessions and lose their lives to them. And Zodiac is one of the best ever. And on top of that, it has such a great atmosphere, which David Fincher is, I think, incredible at creating atmosphere, especially this kind of dread-filled, depressing atmosphere. It's recreating a city in a way that isn't real necessarily, but that it is emotionally complete as a fictional place. And I think that's so much more important for a film than necessarily recreating a real place. Even though obviously it did go through great lengths to recreate the city here, and it does work. but I think even more than that, how he manages to create an atmosphere within the city is just unbelievable. And this is, I think, maybe his best film. Again, I haven't seen everything, so I can't say it definitively, but I think it probably is. Also, like, amazing performances. Like Jake Gyllenhaal, Robert Downey Jr., Mark Ruffalo are all so damn good in this. And I think it's like not career best performance for any of them, but it's up there for all of them. And so many other great actors in there as well, who do great work. Okay, I mean, The Spider Within, which is this like short film from the Spider-Verse movies, which they released on YouTube at the end of this month. I was extremely underwhelmed by. I mean, this was not it for me. I think what it says is, of course, important. Talking about anxiety, it's something that's very important to me. And I think the movie tries, I guess, and it does fine. Like if your kid watches it who's like 6, 7, 8, and it's the first time they're confronted with this topic, it's probably a good thing to show to them. But also I think like it's the most like cliche. If you made a movie about anxiety, this is what it would look like, where like the anxiety is embodied by a shadow, and then at the end it ends with the character deciding that they need to talk to someone. And like, yes, I agree with everything the movie is saying. I just think the way it was made is the most uninteresting, like, cliche way, which for the Spider-Verse films, like, I kind of expect better from them. And even like the animation, it's pretty obvious this didn't get the same budget as the movies, which is fine and understandable, but it's pretty obvious, I think. And just overall, this is like, it's inoffensive, it's fine, it tries to do a good thing, but it's so basic and uninteresting and doesn't do anything really worthwhile beyond like baby's first confrontation with anxiety, which I guess is what it is. So fair enough. Yeah. No. Not I was really disappointed by it, because I think the idea of those people who made the Spider-Verse films telling a story about anxiety in a teenager could have been really interesting, but that's not what we got, in my opinion. I don't know. I mean, we're close to the end now, but then I watched Dark Waters, which is another one going into the great tier. So this is the first Todd Haynes film I've seen, which is a little bit embarrassing to admit, because he's a filmmaker. I really want to see his stuff. I just haven't not gotten to it. I mean, I would have seen May December by now if Netflix didn't decide that no country outside of the North America matters, and they decided to only release it over there. And now here in Germany, we still don't have it months after release, so I haven't seen it yet. But Dark Waters. This, for a filmmaker who I understand is quite eccentric, Dark Waters is a very conventional film, which is not a bad thing, because I think they still managed to elevate it. But it is a conventional legal drama. I think why I still think it's a pretty great movie is, first of all, Mark Ruffalo. Like, between Poor Things and Zodiac and Dark Waters, like, this guy is such a good actor, and he's he's so wasted on Marvel films. I mean, most actors are, quite frankly, but with him it's, I think, especially obvious. And he's really good in this movie. And like, this movie's an important story, and I understand that. And obviously at the end, it gets like slightly preachy, but for the most part, it manages to avoid that trap. Um, but it's just like it's such a well-made legal drama, and I think where a lot of these kind of little man against the corporation movies are, of course, meant to be like inspiring, right? The classic kind of David versus Goliath story. This film was like pretty depressing, and it's really this kind of journey into the darkness of American capitalism. I mean, capitalism at large, but this one, I think, especially because also how it comments on like American excellence and topics like that. It is very specific to America, I think. And just like it leaves you with this feeling of emptiness. And I really like that in films, which sounds maybe a bit weird, but like this movie, where this kind of genre is usually pretty like hopeful, like melodramatic, like yay, we've done it. This movie kind of refuses to go that direction for the most part, and just lets you fall into darkness. And like that's, I think, impressive, and I think it does it so effectively because you don't really see it coming until it's kind of too late. And yeah, I mean, I have to watch some of the stuff that Todd Haynes is actually known for, and not this like weird legal drama people rarely ever talk about. But I mean, that was still like really, really good, and there was other stuff is better. Then I'm extremely excited to check out that stuff. Yeah, also a great looking movie. I mean, it's a very kind of dark and grimy film, but effectively so, and in a way that's weirdly appealing. I don't know. Yeah, and then the last movie I watched this month, that I finished the month with, was Kong Skull Island, which the only reason I watched this movie is because of the new Godzilla Kong film, and this is the only film from the Monsterverse I hadn't seen yet. So I was like, okay, it's time to watch it. And I think what surprised me is that it is, I mean, by far the best film in the Monsterverse, except for maybe Godzilla 2014, which is a movie I like. I know that everybody does, but for me it's a pretty good film. And Kong Skull Island is so much better than the films that come after it. This is, to me, the kind of like fun giant monster action film that people claim the rest are, that don't really work for me. This one actually is fun and silly and giant monsters hitting each other. And also, like, it is a visually pretty striking film, which all of the Monsterverse films, admittedly, I don't think they're great films, but they do look pretty decent for what they are, as these like giant action blockbusters, which often, let's face it, don't look amazing. They look pretty good, but Kong stands out, I think, even within that. I mean, his visual style is very digital, but not in the like disgusting Marvel way, but in a way where it makes it work with these like very saturated colors. And yeah, it is digital, but it is still very appealing in how it depicts this fantastical sky island. And so that's what I finished the month with a positive surprise. It's still not an amazing film. Like, it is better than the monster films, which are awful, but it's not like amazing. It still is just kind of a pretty generic action blockbuster with characters that have no motivations whatsoever. But it is fun, and I think that's more than I expected from this universe. And yeah, that's the 12 movies I watched this month. This is roughly how I would rank them. I mean, I didn't rank them within these, which I guess if I would, it would be like something like this. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll see you guys next month, hopefully. And let me know what you watched, if you watched anything amazing, what you think of the films that I did watch, why I'm wrong about Dune Part 2. And